First, I want to just acknowledge those friends and family that we have lost in this last few weeks, and those friends and family that are ill and struggling, and then the rest of those who are struggling inwardly, which at the moment is almost everyone, more than usual. But even before the virus happened, we had this tremendous problem with anxiety and depression, burnout. You know we did. Some of you watching have been struggling with these things. And this is something I've been talking about and trying to help people with now for 25 years. The amount of anxiety and depression has been going up and up and up. And part of the reason is because of isolation. Before the virus, we were living in a more and more isolated way. When we're online, on social media, for example, or playing a game or watching a movie, etc., our mind goes into a virtual reality. And we have feelings about it, we have reactions to it, but it's not real, and ultimately we know it isn't. When we communicate constantly through text, it's a very limited relationship. Maybe you've noticed this. For example, if I would have sent you a text today beforehand, because I know some of my friends are watching this, if I would have sent, let's say, my friend Jennifer a text, and she writes me back and she says, "Max, how are you today?" And I could send an emoji of a big smiling face. Now, she has to take my word for it. She thinks that that's how he's feeling. He's doing great. But actually, let's pretend that I'm not doing great, that I'm very upset. So I just lied to her. There's no way for her to verify it. But when we see each other in person, Jennifer could look at me in 1 second, no matter how big my smile is. She could think, I know those eyes, something is wrong. So, how are you, Max? And I would say, I'm doing great. And she says, no, you're not. Let's talk. Now, we know this is true, even instinctively and subconsciously, so that means we don't really trust social media. We don't really trust it. We trust our instincts more when we're in front of someone. We trust when they say they love us more when they look in our eyes and say it, rather than sending a nice big red heart to them. So this was the state we were in before already. We were already in social distancing. We've been living like that way for, I'd say, 10 years. We were already social distancing. We were living with a plate of glass in front of us, between us and the ones we love. So now, amidst all the chaos and illness and uncertainty, there are some benefits. I think so. And one of them is when something is taken away from us, we learn its value. So, as I said, we've been living in social distancing, but that was partial denial. Now we have real social distancing. We're not allowed to visit our omas and opas, and they miss us so much. And some of them don't understand why they're not being visited. We miss our friends, our loved ones, our significant others, anyone that we can't be close to. And when we're worried, we want to be closer even than usual, don't we? You know what I mean? If everything is fine, you're okay with your kids living in a different city. Your grown kids, I should say. But when you're worried about safety and the future, then you want to be near them, and you can't. So much has been taken away from us. The inability to comfort others and the inability to be comforted are gone. And we live in a state of real isolation instead of this virtual reality that we were in before. But the interesting thing is, while we're in this confinement, we have all of our devices. It's almost like there's this force saying, we're going to do a little experiment. We're going to see how well these devices really work for you. Because we're not going to let you go see anybody in person. You have to stay inside. But you can have your phone, you can have your iPad, you can have your laptop, you can have your TV. Go ahead, see how it works for you. And we find it doesn't work as well. It's not the same, is it? So hopefully we'll learn our lesson once and for all from this emergency, that we need to be in each other's presence, to hug each other, to hear the voice of our loved ones, to look into the eyes of people we love so much as often as possible. We need to eat together. People love to eat together, to cook for each other, to hand someone else food from your hand. These are instincts that we have that go back millennia, and we hunger to fulfill them. We need to kiss. We need to sleep next to each other. We need the cat on our lap, the dog at our side. We need all of these things. This is what makes life feel safe and beautiful, because there's always hardship in the world. There's always hardship. There was hardship before the coronavirus. There's hardship now, and for some people it's multiplied. So if you want to learn what is of value, abstain from it. So here we are, abstaining. And we're going to be so happy on the day when the government say, you can go outside. You can hug a stranger on the street, the first one you see. People will do that. You wait and see. Like after the wars, people would do that. They'd run outside and just start hugging everybody. It'll be interesting to see what that day is like. Another thing we're faced with is staying at home with our family and spending more hours, because our normal routine quite often is we have a job. We don't see our kids all day. Now some of you are seeing your kids all day. Some of you are spending all day with your spouse or significant other. You're not used to that. And so this reveals our challenges in these relationships. How good of a communicator are we? You know, how well do we communicate really? You're finding out now, aren't you? How good are we at problem solving? Because it's easy to have an argument and then just leave and go to work, and by the evening everybody's cooled down and you go back to this quiet, unspoken normal. But when you're there day after day, you start catching your own habits of, let's say, antisocial habits. Maybe you speak a little bit harshly or too quickly, or make a negative assumption. Then you think, that was me. That wasn't him or her. That was me. Maybe I should apologize. So I think that this time is a good time to reestablish our relationships, to repair them if we can. You want time to repair your relationship? This is it. This is it. And how well do you function with each other during a crisis, by the way? The crisis reveals the relationship. Some people, well, let me put it this way. Some people, their relationship will not last this crisis. They will split up after the crisis. Others, many others, will be stronger for it. You'll know the next time you have a problem in the future, you're going to remember, I remember what they were like during the crisis. I can count on this person. I feel safe with this person. Because I know in the worst of times, she is there, or he is there. I'll never forget. This expression that we've always had, but has become well used recently, we're all in this together, it's true. But it's always been this way. We are always in this together. But now I hope that we learn that when we say it, we mean it. And we learn to talk to each other again. One of the things that I speak about a lot in my events is learning to communicate about emotions. Almost every time I speak to a big group now, I like to ask this question, because especially if you have hundreds of people and you watch this happen, it's hard to ignore the power of it. But even though I can't see you, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand in a moment if the answer to the question is appropriate. So the first question I ask a big group is, raise your hand if you've learned CPR at some point in your life. So raise your hand. I see one hand going up in front of me. If you've learned CPR. Good. So recently I spoke to about 400 people, and 98% of the hands went up. That's a lot of hands. You hear this, all these hands go up. Good. Now put your hand down, and I'll ask you another question. Raise your hand if when you were a child or a young adult, you were taught how to deal with your own grief or the grief of others. Taught in a positive way. Raise your hand if this is true. And in a group of 400, 2 hands went up. 2 out of 400. And I had everyone turn around, the people in the front row, look behind you. I wanted everybody to see there's an absence of education on how to deal with emotions. When I say deal with, one of the ways we deal with it is through communication. I feel this, but what do I say to you? Do I tell you what I'm feeling, or do I talk around it? Or do I say the opposite of what I mean? Or do I speak in code to you and make you guess what I'm really feeling? So we need to learn to speak about emotions. When we study this, when we study communication, our relationships improve. Or at least they're revealed for what they are. Sometimes you have to walk away, but at least you know now I should walk away. But generally, it just improves them. And people feel more loved and they feel safer with you if you can reveal these things. Another way is learning how to be with someone when they're in crisis. Learning how to sit with them, how to speak, learning how to be silent, learning how to be comfortable with someone else's grief. Instead of getting very awkward and wanting to run out of the house, just think, I'm going to sit with you. Just like you would if, let's say you have a teenager with a broken leg, first night. First night with a broken bone is very painful, I can tell you. I've had lots of broken bones. And now what do? You go sit with him. You're not going to fix that leg tonight. He doesn't expect you to fix that leg tonight, but he likes it that you're sitting with him. You pat him on the shoulder. You say, it's going to hurt for a while, but I'll be here with you. Whether you're a father, mother, significant other, brother, sister, friend, just to sit with someone when they're in pain is, I think, something that we should have learned to do as children. But it's not too late to learn now, this month, while we're in confinement, because those in the house are going to go into upset. We need to learn how to express upset without converting it to anger also. Sometimes when we get angry and we start yelling, it's because we're really scared or because we're really sad. Can we just do that? Can you just show me your sadness? Show me that you're scared. Tell me with words. Use your words. And we just might come out of this confinement in a much better state. I've also heard a lot of people say with some shock that they have time for self-care, especially caretakers, people who are used to helping others. Now, they can't really help others, anyone outside their house. and they have time to help themselves. And then we discover, I've been neglecting myself. Where does that come from? Where did I learn that? Don't I deserve care also? So these questions come to mind, have come to my mind. I always assume whenever there's a subject that just keeps coming up into my mind, that it's coming up into others, many others as well. I think we're not so different from each other. So, to renew, to relax, there are a lot of things we can do. The first thing I just covered was community. Whether it's your family, just one person, building community, repairing community, helping people to feel safe, seen, cared for, loved, every day. And don't trivialize this. Please be careful not to say, love you too. It's nice, but it becomes such a superficial habit that it loses its power. But if once a day you stop, you make eye contact and you say, hey, you look at each other in the eyes and you say, have I told you how important you are to me today? I don't think this gets old. Change it around a little bit. How much I adore you, how important you are, how much I love you, how I couldn't live like this without you. This doesn't get old. You have to learn to say it. Now I'm talking to the men especially. You have to learn to say it.